On the Observer's Chair today, my guest, Josiah. Hi, Josiah.
Hi, how are you?
And welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's set the ball rolling. Firstly, who is Josiah?
It's a tough question. I am a lawyer, father, husband, and I run Chapter 1 Foundation. I'm the executive director there. Chapter 1 is a local non-profit that does advocacy around constitutionalism, rule of law, and human rights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I would have loved to hear more about Josiah outside the Chapter 1 environment. You say you're a father, you're a husband. What else do you like to do? Of course, apart from the work that you do, because I know you're very passionate about the work that you do. But outside that, what else are you passionate about?
I love hiking when I get a chance. I also love photography when I get a chance, landscape photography. Yeah. So hiking and photography. I read a bit, a lot. I read a lot also.
You definitely read a lot. I doubt I know a lawyer that reads a bit. You're trying to be modest, but I'm thinking if you're a lawyer, you're definitely not reading a bit.
Yeah.
You're reading a lot.
Yeah, I do read a lot. I end up reading a lot, yeah.
Okay. So let's just get into the nitty-gritties. I know that last time on the podcast, we were looking at the dissolution of Parliament, and that's what was trending, particularly that week. And this week, we're hearing a lot of filing in nomination. And to many people, it could be what's happening now. I just want you to zero in on at what stage of our electoral process we are at now, specifically the nominations. Okay. What's that?
So the nomination phase in the electoral cycle is the point where candidates put themselves forward for election to either the presidential election, the parliamentary election for constituency-based seats, or the ward election for ward-based seats. So this is the process where candidates put themselves forward for election. So it's a preliminary step to ensure that candidates meet the constitutional qualifications for the seats that they're contesting for. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say that they meet the criteria or they qualify, if I'm a candidate and I'm putting I like how the phrase you're using, I'm putting myself up for that particular seat that I'm contesting for. As I go to filing my nomination, am I already sure that I am qualified or 100% ready that I will pass the nomination? There's no guarantee, right? At that point that I am or I will manage to file in that nomination.
Yeah, no, there's no guarantee. We've seen in the past certain nominations being rejected because a candidate failed to comply with the guidance or regulations that ECZ has issued, or that they've left out necessary documentation to show that they qualify, or they haven't brought forward the requisite number of supporters that they're supposed to show that they have in order to qualify. So it's not guaranteed when you're going forward, but due diligence before can minimize the risk of your nomination being rejected by.
Okay, we'll talk a bit about the documentation that's required later. I want us to back up a little bit. We have seen already, like I mentioned, that what's happening now is, first of all, I think last week, the week of the 15th, what was trending was the dissolution of Parliament, and now it's the nomination. We have seen situations where 2 or 3 candidates are attempting to file in their nomination, but from the same political party and from vying for the same position. The reason why I said I want us to back up a little bit is there something that happens before the candidate goes to file in the nomination, possibly at political party level, that should be able to take care of that situation or that scenario that I've just given as an example?
Yes, there is. The first step is political party primaries. So the primaries are the step where political party candidates or people vying for elected positions, hoping to stand on a political party ticket, put themselves up or show interest within the political party that they want to stand. Now, in such a case, it won't be one person vying for a specific constituency. So there'll be elections within a political party to come up with the best candidate for a specific position. So what we're seeing now is the results of a flawed primary process within many political parties, where there's no clear regulation or guidance on how the primary process is undertaken in order to select candidates. So what happens is when people show up, other people also have the same documentation from the political party. And then some of the more violent incidences are unfortunate, but also show just how weak the intra-party democracy is, that individuals are resorting to violence to prevent other people from filing in their nomination papers.
Okay. Story for another day, but I just wanted us to sort of touch that a little bit, because I know that could be a question that could be going in people's minds to say, look, wait, if the nomination process is so straightforward, why are we seeing 2-3 candidates? So I just wanted you to put that on record. But what, talking about the nomination process, let's talk about its relevance, why it's important in the electoral process.
Yeah, so the nomination process is important to ensure that the candidates that are up for elections qualify, they meet the criteria for holding the office they want to attain. It would be very unfortunate if we didn't have this nomination process and people just went up for elections, that after the election we'll find out that this person doesn't qualify to hold that seat. So it's a necessary sieve to ensure we get the candidates that qualify for an election or to hold office.
Okay, and what's the documentation now? Let's come to the documentation.
Okay. So essentially, the documentation is an affidavit indicating you qualify. Also, now you need an adoption certificate from a political party signed by the Secretary General or certain office holders, and that comprises of the sort of nomination papers. So if you also fill in a nomination form, which you present to the presiding officer at ECZ.
Okay. Yeah. So who oversees this, the process, the nomination process?
The nomination process is overseen by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Constitutionally, it's mandated to oversee the elections. So they oversee the nomination process, as I think this is the first step of the electoral cycle, the electoral process, where ECZ comes in to interact or engage with potential candidates. So when they compile their documentation, that's the affidavit, nomination paper, certificate of adoption, the grade 12 certificate, and all those things which you attach to your affidavit, when you present those to ECZ, it's ECZ that will go through to vet the qualifications of the candidate. So we've seen over the last few days, the ECZ reject some nominations for presidential candidates because they don't qualify for one reason or another, because that's their role in sieving out candidates that don't qualify for holding the specific offices they're vying for.
Okay. So the vetting process is, do the candidates submit this documentation before they appear on that day that they're scheduled to file in their nomination, or do they carry them with at the time that they're scheduled to show up and file in the nomination? I ask that because I'm wondering, does that give enough time, for the vetting process? I appear there, you go through my documentation, and with all the fracas of, there are people and somebody else is scheduled to come after me, so I need to beat my time. And I'm wondering, is the due diligence really, is it really done to the latter, to the point where you could actually catch or intercept any incorrect information, or also that maybe you could also you could misjudge some information. So either credit or discredit a candidate due to maybe the time factor, or do they submit the documentation before that day, or it's on the actual day?
I think it's the actual day. So you're given, when ECZ issues their timetable for specific nomination, for the nomination schedule,
Right.
you show up with your papers, your supporters, and you file in the documentation, you make the declaration. But it's important to note that this is just the first step.
Right.
It doesn't end, the vetting process doesn't end there. And I think we'll discuss this a bit later. But the Constitution envisages that people can challenge the nomination even after it's filed. So after the nominations are filed, ECZ is supposed to publish this information, and you're given a time frame within which to challenge the nomination of a specific candidate. And the courts are also given a time frame to address that dispute around nomination. So if you recall, in the last election, certain candidates filed their nominations, but then they were challenged to say they don't possess a valid grade 12 certificate. So that's the process that happens after you file in. So in case there's anything that's been missed, there's a process to ensure there's any issues are addressed afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
And do we have any measures that are taken for misinformation, or maybe submission of, it could be forged documentation or just a misrepresentation of information that's given by a candidate, either intercepted at the point of attempting to file in a nomination, or like you said, after further probing and you discover that there was some misrepresentation, misinformation somewhere, what happens? Do you just say, okay, fine, we're dropping your nomination is invalid, you're disqualified? What are the measures that are put in place for in case of that development?
So I think the electoral process has to be read with other laws that exist and applicable at the time. So if you make a false claim on your declarations, which are statutory declarations, then it's a criminal offense to make a false statutory declaration. So in the ideal world, the law enforcement agencies will step in to prosecute any wrongdoing. If my memory serves me right, I believe a candidate was once prosecuted for presenting a forged grade 12 certificate. Right. So I think that the process that happens after ensures that firstly candidates qualify, but also any wrongdoing or any false information provided can be identified and sieved out, but then the erring party can be held accountable for forging a document and so on. But then that will be based off criminal prosecution, not necessarily a mechanism within the electoral process.
Okay. Yeah. And still touching on the issue of our laws, do you feel, or what would be your take really in terms of them providing fairness and transparency in the nomination process?
I think the laws are quite slim. We could expand on them to provide greater transparency throughout the process. Like we started by saying, the first step isn't even at nomination, it's the political party primaries. So there's no law mandating that these primaries should be undertaken in a democratic manner. There's no law prescribing that the primaries should be in a transparent manner. So we just sort of see candidates pop up by political parties, and we're seeing this confusion now. So that's the first step. And this is why many organizations, including CCMG, Chapter 1, have been advocating for a political parties legislation that does more than just provide for the finances of political parties, but also goes to direct how the internal affairs of political parties will be conducted. So that's one way we can make the process more transparent. The other is ensuring that the publication of the affidavits and the information candidates provide is widely circulated. I think We saw in the last election that the presidential asset, liability, and income disclosure was not published. That undermines the transparency of the process, because you want to know, firstly, what is this person coming into office with? Who do they owe? What are their sources of income, so that we can identify any potential conflicts when they take up office. But that doesn't happen. So we need those documents to be public, but also very accessible to the ordinary Zambians, so that they can see they can know this information about the candidates. So that's one way we could make it more transparent. Then after this process, there's the dispute resolution the disputes that happen after the nomination papers are filed. Our courts are open to the public, but not everybody can travel to sit in court and hear how the dispute is resolved. So maybe more transparency around how electoral disputes, starting from the nomination processes, are resolved by opening up the court more, making it more transparent, maybe televising some of the hearings, just so that the public know how disputes are resolved. But transparency is important for that. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about citizens coming in, what are citizens at this point really looking out for? Is there something that they should have their ear to the ground for? What should they be looking out for? Or are we saying this nomination process is really none of your business? Just wait until they come to kneel in your constituency asking for your votes. At this particular point, as the nominations, are taking place, where are the citizens? What should they be looking out for, if at all any?
So the starting point is citizens are involved in the nomination process. Every candidate has to show that they have a certain number of supporters in order to qualify for a seat. So at presidential level, I believe they have to show 100 supporters from each province, I believe. The number might be wrong, but they have to show that number. Even at constituency level, you have to show you have a certain level of support. So that's an entry point for citizens. If you support a candidate, you go forward with them and show the Electoral Commission that this candidate has the minimum number of supporters required for election to either president, ward, or constituent, or for a constituency. Then beyond that, it's also looking at the declarations and seeing whether candidates have presented false information. Citizens need to be able to report that this candidate has lied, and that's why the Constitution doesn't limit who can challenge the nomination. If you allow me to read, Article 52(4) says a person may challenge before a court or tribunal as prescribed the nomination of a candidate within 7 days of the close of nominations, and the court shall hear and determine the case, because there's an amendment now, hear and determine the case within a specific amount of time. So again, citizens should be involved in the nomination by providing this level of oversight in terms of whether candidates actually qualify, so citizens can challenge the nomination process. They are the main stakeholder throughout the electoral cycle, so they have to be involved in every step.
How do I do that as a citizen? It sounds good when you tell me I can challenge it. So I have information and proof beyond reasonable doubt that this particular candidate has issued false information or has misrepresented some of the information. How do I challenge that as an ordinary citizen?
I believe you'd have to go to the Constitutional Court or a tribunal. There are tribunals that deal with local level politics. So you either go to the Constitutional Court or the tribunals. The procedure is quite complicated in terms of the technical inputs.
That's the reason why I'm asking, because it sounds good when you say an ordinary citizen can challenge it. I mean, I'm an ordinary citizen and I'm already thinking, okay, so what am I going to do? And already when you start saying, no, the Constitutional Court, the tribunal, and I'm thinking the technicalities of an ordinary, is there a procedure where a citizen, as easy as it is to walk into a constituency office, for example, to just say, to complain about something in my constituency, is there a lower level where they could go to that is going to then take the step of going to the tribunals or the constitutional court? I say this knowing that many times I think the ill towards citizens is we say their entitlement at the back of our minds, knowing how impossible some of those steps can be to take.
Okay. Yeah. So the petitioning process can be quite complicated for citizens to undertake. But Chapter 1 Foundation, in partnership with the Southern African Institute for Policy Analysis and Research and CCMG, signed an MOU. And as part of that MOU, Chapter 1 will be helping candidates and citizens who have concerns around the elections navigate the legal process or the legal procedures. So what we'll be doing is we'll be creating templates for petitions where people can simply add in the information that they seek to form part of their petition. And I must correct something that I said earlier. It's not just the Constitutional Court, but also the High Court.
Right.
So it's the Tribunal, High Court, or Constitutional Court, depending on which election you're looking to challenge or which nomination you're looking to challenge. So this information will be provided by Chapter 1. We'll be looking to share this information with citizens and candidates. But generally, the procedures in Zambian courts can be quite complicated and quite demanding and involving. So this is the importance of cross-sector advocacy. We shouldn't look at elections in isolation. The need to advocate for simpler court processes is just as important as ensuring that the electoral laws are clear enough for candidates and citizens to navigate.
All right. So that definitely brings in the issue of ensuring that citizens are informed. You're talking about the aspect of advocacy, which I know that Chapter 1 has a strength towards. Whose responsibility, on whose shoulders should this really lie on ensuring that citizens are well informed in order for them to really know exactly what they need to be doing on their end, but also what they need to be looking out for? Is it the state? Is it political parties? Is it civil society? Who really should be responsible?
It should be every electoral stakeholder's responsibility. An informed citizenry or better inform decisions they make. So the Electoral Commission undertakes voter education, educating the citizens on how to navigate the voting process. And that includes information around how to challenge some of these processes. I think that should be included. Civil society conduct voter education and civic education so that citizens better know their rights around the process. And same with the government. The government enacts these laws. They should be able to engage citizens about what these laws mean to them and how citizens can be involved in the process. So it should be all stakeholders in the electoral stakeholders, including political parties. It is their duty to ensure their membership is informed, because if their membership isn't informed, they are the ones who will face candidates being disqualified. They're the ones who will face candidates not being able to be upfront or on the ballot. So it's every stakeholder that should be informing citizens, sharing information about voting, but also civic education.
Okay. As you were talking, I thought of something that I'd wanted to ask earlier, and it's regarding the nomination fees. I know that generally you hear it, in the streets, and citizens will have discussions here and there, and some people say, look, the nomination fees, I think they need to be either upped or hiked, because now we're having every Jim and Jack jokers going to filing their nominations, and others are saying, no, I think we need to either scrap them off, lower them, so that they don't differentiate anyone. Should be able to. What's your take or your feeling around the issue of nomination fees?
I think they need to maybe go back in history and find out what the basic what's the reason for nomination fees.
Right.
If somebody's putting themselves up to serve the public, I guess the fees act as firstly a barrier to ensure the person is serious, but they also limit who can put themselves forward. I mean, you might find a situation where a joker has the 100,000 or whatever it is, and they put it up because they've got money to waste, but they're a joker. And you find serious candidates who don't have that 100,000 or whatever it is for the presidential seat. So in my view, they act more as a hindrance to ensuring a fair level playing field than they are a barrier to ensure the people that put themselves forward are serious. And from that perspective, I wouldn't support having very high
FT.
nomination fees, or even indeed scrapping them and then letting the electorate choose who's serious or who's not. I think that's my personal view, but yeah.
Okay. I wish we had, more time to sort of delve deeper into the issue of the nomination stage. But quickly, I want to hear your take on, or what you feel, your recommendation rather, on how you feel that it could be constitutionally, it could be in whatever things that need to be put in place for us to try and strengthen not only the nomination process, but also just to ensure that we have the gray areas sorted out. You did mention earlier in our chat about that some of these things begin at the political party primaries, and then all these gray areas that we have talked about. What would be your suggestions, your recommendations? Where do you think we need to strengthen things? Is it our laws? Is it the constitution? Or is it what processes just need to be, amended in order for us to sort of up the nomination stage of the electoral process?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think for us, if you view elections as a process, and there are lots of steps or parts of that process that are not even related to the election itself, the political party primaries, political party transparency, the independence of the commission, the powers of the commission, the role of the courts in intervening in the electoral process, then you get a sense of all the gaps that we have in the system. And that's one of the reasons why we've been advocating for comprehensive and holistic constitutional reforms, so that you can address the gaps in political party legislation. The Constitutional Court last month, I believe, gave a judgment where they said the government has to enact political parties legislation within a year. So that plugs one of the gaps. But then questions also go to the independence and autonomy of the Electoral Commission. How are commissioners appointed? How are they held accountable? So we need to look at the laws governing that as well. We need to look at ensuring that, firstly, the constitutional provisions promote this transparency and good governance where declarations can be accessed by the public. We need to make the court system simpler and easier to navigate for citizens. So in my view, we need this holistic look at all these contributing sectors to the electoral cycle and electoral process, and ensure that we enact laws that strengthen institutions, but make them also more accountable and transparent in how decisions are made, and also make the processes easier for citizens to navigate. So this holistic review of legislation, starting with the Constitution, is necessary in my view to plug these gaps. What we've found is, if you look at a reform in isolation, it tends to firstly perpetuate some of the existing gaps. So looking at a problem in isolation means you leave out some of the factors that contribute to the problem you're trying to solve. And in many ways, you end up entrenching these problems. So this holistic review is necessary in our view, starting with the Constitution, but also looking at the institutions that are part of the electoral process, like the police, for instance. How independent are the police in ensuring that a fair level playing field is created? So we need this holistic review of a lot of our legislation.
Okay, quite enlightening. Well, I guess this is where we are going to end our chat,
Yes.
knowing that we possibly will have you back.
Sure, I'll be happy to be
Yes.
back.
But before you go, so I'm going to make 3 statements to you,
Uh-huh.
and I want you to like just randomly give me an answer. I would appreciate 1 or 2 words.
Okay.
But the first thing that comes into your mind, like it's gonna be really random. Like if I say the nomination process, if you were to give it a movie title, what movie would it be?
Mad Max.
Okay, that's a bit too random for me. Yeah? All right. Okay. 1 word that no. That would be quite similar. I'm trying to think of what's the biggest misunderstanding that you think would possibly happen in Zambia's nomination process? That like biggest misunderstanding. What would it be?
In 1 word,
2.
the biggest misunderstanding. Mm,
What would it be?
Overconfidence, I think.
Okay.
Overconfidence by candidates. They're overconfident without doing due diligence.
Would that be like in the case of the Joker with the 100,000?
Yes.
Okay. Most dramatic thing that you think could happen
The
at
most
any given nomination center.
dramatic thing that could happen is, but the first thing that comes to mind is an incumbent saying they're not going to stand.
Oh, that's beyond dramatic.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, that's totally dramatic. Okay, Josiah, let me not probe your mind further, but I just thought, like randomly but I can tell that you're constantly thinking around these areas. They say all work and no play makes Josiah what?
A dull boy.
A dull boy. What's for the weekend?
I have a birthday
Apart from
party.
work.
There's a birthday party I'm attending, but I'm looking forward to playing with my son.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
He's a joy.
Wow, lovely. Josiah, thank you so much for coming
Thank you
to,
for having me.
to the Observer's Chair.
Thank you for having me.
Right, that was the Observer's Chair. I'm Chiwesa Ngwira. Remember, this is your front row seat to the future of Zambia's democracy. Until next time, bye-bye.